we'll make a start because time's moving on. Thank you to everybody for attending this morning. My name's Steve Waud. I'm the Chief Executive of the Business Enterprise Fund. And we're just going to go along the table and people are going to introduce themselves, telling us who they are and what connection they have to SME finance. So starting with Pam at the end.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pam Goodison and I'm a business growth enabler at the NatWest Banks. It's quite a new role to the bank. This involves signposting SME businesses to different sources of support and includes funding requirements, whether it be for cash flow, purchasing premises, kit or general business funding.
Morning everybody, my name's Richard Doyle. I was an SME. I set up a business 30 years ago now, which I developed and sold 10 years ago. And since then, I've been working with a number of other businesses where I have been a non-exec director for 7 SMEs. I've invested in 4 and I've helped raise money for 3 others.
Good morning everyone, my name's Colin Whitehead. I'm a partner at Naylor Wintersgill, a firm of accountants here in the centre of Bradford. We work majority with SMEs all the way from inception through to audit levels, so our biggest clients are around 35-40 million. In terms of what I've done, I've worked with Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business course, delivering the finance module, young enterprise, president of the local accountant society, and passionate about working with growing businesses.
Good morning everybody, I'm Andy Chaffer. I work here in Bradford for the Business Enterprise Fund. The Business Enterprise Fund is a social enterprise. Its main remit is to assist smaller businesses to raise funding at the time they need it most. We don't mainstream funders like Pam. We work alongside mainstream funders to get money into businesses to allow them to achieve their growth aspirations. That might be because they need help in acquiring premises, plant and machinery, or maybe just working capital, but there's a whole host of things that we might get involved with.
Okay, folks, I think that's working, but it doesn't sound very loud. Anyway, we will have opportunities to ask questions towards the end, so if you've got any specific issues that you want to ask the panel, then we'll be able to deal with those towards the end of the session. I think we've got till about 2:30 to get through all the questions, so we'll race through, but anything that you've got on the tip of your tongue, if you can hold back until the end, and then we can deal with that. So we'll ask the panel in turn. We'll start with Andy at this end. Just give us an idea of the businesses that you work with, yeah? And what particular sectors and types of businesses that you want to work with, and we'll take our turns just going along the panel answering that question. Okay,
well, we work with all types of businesses, so that's sole traders, partnerships and limited companies. We are very active in lending money to start-up businesses, and they're very often sole traders. Those businesses often later morph into limited companies. So we work across all the different business types. In terms of sectors, we will lend money to all the major manufacturing sectors and also any of the service sectors. In terms of sectors that we don't get involved with, really, the really only businesses we wouldn't talk to are businesses that we perceive as doing something illegal or immoral that we couldn't support. But generally, we cover the whole remit of businesses that you'd see out there in the world.
So anybody who wants money for illegal or immoral purposes, we will refer you to somebody else. Okay, Colin.
My firm, we're general practitioners, so we work with all sectors and sizes of businesses, like I mentioned, from start-up all the way through. Our sweet spot really is owner-managed SMEs and family businesses that want to grow, that have a roadmap that they want to follow to achieve the goals. We really like working with those kind of businesses, and personally, I'm not bothered what sector they're in. It's about people who are passionate about their business, because that's where I think you achieve the best results, when you're working with someone who loves what they do, loves their business, and we can really add value to their process.
Pam?
Oh, thank you.
So the kind of sectors
Yeah.
and the kind of businesses you like to deal with.
We'll try and work with all types of businesses and sectors. Obviously, if there is a business that's struggling, it's going to be more difficult for us to have a look at. But again, like Andy said, we wouldn't get involved with any illegal or immoral types of businesses. We do have specialists as well in property. We're one of the few lenders that will look at investment and property, whether it be residential or commercial. And also we've got specialists in healthcare, such as your doctors, dentists, and agriculture as well.
Farming, right.
Yep.
Now, one of the points, before we come to you, Richard, one of the points about the businesses that viable businesses, can you give a bit of a definition of a viable business?
Well, when we look at the financials of the business, we have an obligation to that business and to the general public, and also with our FCA obligations, to make sure that that business can afford to repay the borrowing. So we do that by looking at the financials, or we look at the projections of the business, because obviously financials could be out of date or historic, and that business may have changed since then. So, we'll look at the projections for the business as well.
Okay. So, Richard, as a man who uses his own money, what the kind of businesses and types of businesses are you looking for?
Specifically illegal and immoral. No.
Your looks in, folks.
No, I'm joking. My background is tech, specifically IT, so I really only am interested in tech or IT businesses because I think I can add more value to those than I could any other business.
And sorry, Richard, typically in the angel investment world, so that's individuals who use their own money to invest in businesses, they would typically have a specialism like that they would want to invest in?
Some will just say, I've built and grown a business and I've got great generic business skills, therefore I will look at anything. I take the view that I can make a mess of a tech company, so why would I want to get involved in something I know nothing about? But seriously, I think I can just, if you can deal with businesses in an industrial sector you understand as an angel or a high net worth or whatever you want to call these people, I think you can add a lot more value. Principally, you will have contacts. They may be suppliers, they may be customers, there may be industry contacts, but more importantly, you'll understand the market and how these people are trying to break into a sector that you understand. Whereas if somebody came along with a wonderful proposition to open 1,000 hairdressing shops, I could advise them on business and people and management, but I couldn't tell them anything about
quaffing your hair.
Exactly. So that's why I tend to focus. Personally, I'd like them with a bit of traction, may not be profit, but might have some revenues and have gone past that proof of concept stage, and ideally something that's pretty well established that is ready for growth and has probably got a long-term exit in mind.
Okay, all right. So we hear an awful lot these days, and have heard since about 2007, 2008, when we had the financial crisis, that SMEs find it hard to find finance, okay? So shall we kind of either bust this myth or support this myth? So who should we start with? So Colin, since you're an accountant and you get to deal with clients on a regular basis, what's your feeling on that particular subject?
I think there's a few reasons why SMEs think they struggle to find funding. Funding is out there, it is available, but it's not as easy as it was in the past perhaps, and people need to be aware of that when they're actually looking to get that finance. I think there's possibly a lack of awareness within the SME market, who the funders are, where they can go, what they can access. It's not just about the high street banks and names anymore. There are the other funders out there, BEF, people like that. I think it's also a bit of lack of understanding of the process in the SME market. When you're applying for funding, the funders have a process to follow, and you've got to go along with that process and give them everything they want and play the game a little. You've got to give them accurate information, be honest and upfront. If they question your figures, and it does happen where you meet a client and they've got a fantastic business, and they go from a start-up to earning £1 million profit in 12 months, and they can't see why the bank would question that. It is difficult. It's about getting your plan right, getting all the backup right, doing a really good business plan, short, concise, executive summary, solid cash flows with solid assumptions behind it. So when the bank are looking at it, it is robust and it does stand up to scrutiny, because they will ask the questions. And if you then have to go back and say, oh, well, I've got to revise that, oh yeah, I better revise that as well, it does question your business acumen. And I think also, the SME market has got to understand that, you know, banks and investors want, for want of a better phrase, want to see a bit of skin in the game. You know, if they're willing to invest in your business, are you willing to back your business as well? That could be in various different forms, but I often think if you as a business can, if you've put some of your own money in to start the business, or can offer some sort of security without tying yourself up too much and putting something in as well, it just shows your commitment to the business. And I personally think that puts you in a stronger position.
Yeah. Now, you have just explained a process there whereby people submit a business plan, they put the financial forecast together, all of those different things. The problem is that's not everybody's expertise, is it?
No.
And so immediately you find yourselves kind of overcoming a hurdle that's probably a very big hurdle to overcome. So what do business owners do in those circumstances?
I think the best thing you can do is
find a friendly neighbourhood accountant.
Exactly, yeah. I think it's find a good professional firm. There are lots of good firms out there, and ask for their advice. A lot of firms will have a meeting with you to discuss your ideas initially, and most of them will do it free of charge with a look to, you know, either helping you with the projections or just giving some advice. There are some good workshops out there run by local, you know, charities and things to help you do that. But I think if you are going to go for finance, understanding your figures and understanding your business is so critical. And I think what you tend to find is the entrepreneurs that are new to the world so passionate about their idea that the figures are secondary. When really, when you're going for funding, yes, you've got to show your passion behind your business and understand that, but have these solid projections behind that. And if that is prepared by a professional, I think that adds extra weight as well.
Thanks, Colin. So, Pam, are you going to bust this myth? Is it difficult for SMEs to find finance?
I would reiterate what Colin said completely on, you know, the things that we're looking for. It's still a perception that the banks are not lending, and customers are often surprised when we tell them that we are open for business. So again, if a start-up business, they've got a strong business plan, profit and loss forecast, and we will, as I said, check them figures back. So really, you know, if we can't do lending, we will always try and find a source of funding for that business as well. So effectively, we're not saying, no, we can't help you, we'll try and find you help elsewhere. Okay,
so a bit of myth busting there by Pam. She's saying the banks are lending. If you want to come through and have a seat, please do. Don't just, we're going to be here for ages, you don't want to be standing. Just smile as you walk past the camera. Richard, so in your vast experience, you've been doing this a long time, you say. What's your experience?
I think my experience of the people I have spoken to is that most of them don't understand why people would want to lend you money or invest in your business. There's only one reason they're doing it, and that is because they want a return on their money that is greater than the money they put in. So if they're going to lend you money, they want a decent rate of return. If somebody's going to lend you money, they want to know that, or have a good idea that it's going to be something that you can afford to repay. And if somebody's going to invest, they're only going to invest because they think as a result of investing, they're going to increase the value of their investment. And a lot of smaller businesses with great ideas don't really get that. I invested in a business where we had to remove one of the senior people, basically because they couldn't do the job. And we saw an email that somebody had sent to them some time ago that they replied to, and it said, I'm no longer with the business because some of our investors were only interested in making money. Now, I don't know why they thought anybody would want to invest in a business other than to make money. It certainly wasn't to give them a lavish lifestyle. And I think this is one of the problems, and the gentleman on my left talked about sharing the risk. There's always a risk when you lend or invest, and you want to make sure that the people you are lending to or investing in share that risk. They are exposed as well. Rather than me just losing a lump of money, if I lose that, they're going to feel some pain as well. And that's what you need, because there have been many surveys done on entrepreneurs, and there's one thing that comes out, and it's fear of failure. And the bigger the fear of failure, in my experience, the more chance you've got of them making it happen. I was looking up a document I came across some time ago, which was produced by, I think, a business angel group, and it was for people like me who are thinking of investing into businesses like yours, and it's an investor checklist. So we've talked about business plans and the things you need to do, but if you could look at what an investor is looking for in a business and you could tick all those boxes, then you'd be in a better position when you go to your bank or your lender or your family and friends to get money. And I'm happy to share that with you via whichever medium we want to share that with. It's 2 pages, and it's got a lot of things to think about before you start looking for money.
Well, that will come to our next question, I think, which might be useful. So I'm going to allow Andy the final word on this particular point. And just before he does, just remind folks that in the UK, 99.9% of all businesses are SMEs. And of the 99.9% of those businesses which are SMEs, 99.3% of those are 9 employees or less. So they are the small businesses. And they are the ones who struggle to find finance even now. Some recent surveys said that over 50%, it was 2 months ago, over 50% of small SMEs struggle to get the finance they want. So that's still an issue today. So I thought I'd slip that one in before Andy answers on behalf of BEF. Andy?
Yeah, well, I've got to agree with lots of the comments that have been made by my close neighbours here. There is a huge amount of money out there that is looking for a good home, and that's a combination of traditional high street lenders who've all got plenty of money to lend to good propositions, and an absolute myriad of alternative funders, many of whom have been in business less than 10 years. There is a huge marketplace out there, and you've got other people, social investors like BEF, and we invest in businesses at a very early stage, often at pre-sale stage when it's the most dangerous time for anybody to make an investment. But Colin is absolutely right. If people do not have a good, concise plan and some rudimentary but believable forecasts on the figures, it makes it very difficult for anybody to put their money in. And I'm always personally very worried if people don't have a grasp on the numbers on the business. I'm sure we've all watched Dragon's Den and laughed when people can't tell the difference between turnover and profit, and we all have a laugh at that. But there really are lots of people out there who start a business who don't know the difference between turnover and profit. And if you're, as Richard said, if you're a person sat at the other side of the desk who's about to hand their money over to that business entrepreneur, it is a real worry, and it does prevent you being funded. So most businesses can be explained by the numbers. It's very difficult early on at a pre-start stage because you're making forecasts about something that's not yet happened. But there's a lot you can do in terms of doing some market research, getting letters of intent from people who say they will buy from you if you start. There's lots of things you can do as a business to make the investor or a lender feel more confident in your ability to deliver some figures, because at the end of the day, as Richard quite rightly says, everybody wants their money back for a whole host of reasons. So cash flow is really key for businesses, and if the business owners don't understand the cash flow and how that works, it's always going to make it difficult to get funding. But there is a huge amount of money out there, so if you if you get your plan and forecasts into a good shape, I'm very confident that you will get funded. It is horses for courses, so if you're a tech business, there's no point going to see people who don't invest in tech, and vice versa. You've got to talk to the right people, but there is a huge amount of money and lots of the right people around. You've just got to find them.
Okay, so there's lots of money around and people are willing to throw it at you as long as you're the right kind of person. So we're moving on to the next question, and I suppose it adds to the previous questions that we had, but what's the major issue that SMEs have in accessing finance? What's the major issue, and how can they improve their chances? So we can be fairly brief on this one because we might be just covering a little bit of the previous ground. But go on, Pam, since you're the one who gets 55% of all businesses inquiries in the UK, apparently. Not you personally, but your bank.
Apologies, I thought I'd answered this already.
Key points that you would like, so bullet points.
Yeah, okay. I would say making sure that the cash flow is right, as Andy said. It's a big factor when business is growing. And making sure that there's enough cash there to support that growth. I think there is still some caution due to perception, with negative press as well on lending. But we're actually, as you said, we're seeing demand for lending increase. So we've actually doubled our lending since this time last year.
Okay. Do you want to share some of the major points from your list there?
Well, I could pick some out, but I guess the main one is presenting to the potential lender investor a proposal that includes the ability to repay the loan over a period of time, whatever that period of time is, if it's a loan, and if it's an investment, a plan that shows them how they can get their money back out of the business, i.e. when they can get a return on that investment, whether it be 3, 5, 10 years, and how you plan to be able to return that investment to them, either by selling the business or by paying them back over a period of time out of profits. But it all comes back to the one point, which is having some form of business plan and some form of forecast, a believable forecast that shows how your business is going to grow and where this cash that you're going to return to people is going to come from.
Yeah, we're not avoiding this, are we? Because it all comes down to you, Colin. You're the man. So ultimately, they've got to find themselves a good accountant who can help them, or a good business advisor who can help them put the numbers together.
Yes, I have cards. No, I think...
But that's expensive.
Not necessarily. A lot of accountants now are willing to work on fixed pricing. You can get a good firm of accountants and fix your price, and you can pay monthly for that for certain service levels. I think at times people look at accountants and lawyers as distress costs. I don't want to spend the money, but I have to. And I think actually finding the right accountant and find the person you have that rapport with is worth that, because they will understand you. They'll be able to put you in touch with the right people. They will have the connections to get you in front of the right people to get you funding. It sounds really cheesy, but when I meet clients and we do business plans and we talk through it, I think there's always a phrase that I tell them to remember, and that is: turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Cash is reality. Yeah, you need to remember that when you're putting your business plan together. And if you remember that, stick to those principles, you shouldn't go too far wrong.
Okay. So as an alternative funder, Andy, and we get to sit through 20 or 30 business propositions every week to look at, and we get to see the good, the bad and the ugly, and there's quite a few ugly. What are the kind of things we're looking for?
Well, we're looking for people who've got the requisite skills to grow the business that they're looking for funding for. So as Richard said before, he looks for tech investments, and he'd be very uncomfortable supporting a business that wasn't tech focused. Likewise, if someone comes along to us with a proposition for a sector that they know really well, perhaps they've worked for a big company in a particular sector and they've decided they want to set up their own company in the same sector, it's much easier to have confidence in that than if someone comes in with a completely different sector that they've never ever worked in. So it may be that someone, and you do see this sometimes, someone is very successful as an employee in a big company, but they have a burning desire outside work. They've maybe got a hobby that's a really overriding passion in their life, and sometimes those people can develop really good businesses around that hobby or passion. But again, that would come out in the interviews that we have with people. We like to meet people face to face, ask them questions about their idea and the project, and you'd like to think that that enthusiasm and passion would come out. So we like people to have energy and passion and drive for the project that they're putting before us, and then we'll want to ask them about their likely clients, the prices that they're going to charge those clients and why they think they can get those prices. We're going to come back to this issue of the cash flow, because obviously a sale's not a sale until your client has actually paid the bill. So it's one thing supplying someone at a great price and a great margin, but if they never pay you, you're going to be in trouble. So we're going to be asking, you know, how quickly do they pay you? Have you factored that into your forecasts? So we're trying to get, going back to something Richard said earlier, years ago I saw a guy who was helping to teach people to pitch for money, and he was saying, you know, if you're going to stand up and stand up in front of an audience of hardened business angels looking to get their wallet open, you've really got to appeal to both their head and their heart. You've got to, the idea's got to make logical sense and appeal to their head, but also investors are much more likely to put money into something where they have some kind of an emotional attachment to it for whatever reason. So I think that's a kind of way we operate. We look at things that are not bankable situations. Often the people coming into us are at a very early stage. They maybe not started trading, or they may have just started trading. They may not have no collateral to offer to a bank to secure facilities. So it may be at the very early stage. But there's lots they can do to convince us that they're worthy of support. And the government have a startup loan scheme which we administer, which allows anybody over 18 to get up to £25,000 individually to go towards a business that's been trading less than 2 years. So again, going back to this point that there is lots of money out there, there's government money out there to help startup scenarios. So that's another very useful boost for people coming out with new business ideas and looking for early stage funding.
Okay, all right.
Steve, is it worth introducing the LEP, given that the LEP person isn't here, because they've got funding help and advisors available to help not just startups but established SMEs who want to go into the next level, haven't they? I think
they have.
Yes. Have they, Andy?
They
Yes.
have. Yeah, they have.
Yes.
The LEP have got funding, and it mainly comes into two areas. They'll often put £1 in for every £4 you raise towards capital expenditure.
You say often.
Well,
They may.
they may. Yeah, you've still got to have a viable plan and forecasts. That it's not an automatic. You put £1 in, or you put £4 in. We'll put £1 in. But
You've got
if
to
the
take on X number of people as well, haven't you?
it helps if you're growing employment.
Yeah.
But they do have money, lots of money to go towards good projects, and they also have a lot of money to go towards skills and training. So if part of your plan is to employ more people and you need them to skill up quickly and get up to a certain level of competence, then training, you can often get 50% of training costs from the LEP.
I think I'm right in saying that they also have some consultants who might help you understand if you've got a fundable business without charge, without you having to go to accountants or professionals as the first stage. Am I right in saying that? I think I am.
I think that's right. And obviously,
Yeah.
Pam, you've got some growth enablers as well, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. So there's 73 of us all around the country, and we'll help try and signpost and support them businesses by inviting them along to events such as this and running our own events.
Come on in, guys. Find a seat. You don't have to be standing there. Don't worry. You're not interrupted. Yeah, please carry on. It's all right. Just smile as you go past the camera. Okay, we're going to get slightly more contentious now. Some of the information, before we do get contentious, some of the information like the LEP stuff and some of the access to different funds that are available, I'm sure will go on to the website for the Yorkshire Enterprise Network. So we'll have a word with the organisers to ensure that that information's there available for folks. so that if we do speak falsely on behalf of they were supposed to be here, so if we're not experts, it's because they're stuck on the M62, not able to get here, or she's having a duvet day, not sure which. So, Brexit, okay, big elephant in the room. Everything seems to have calmed down a bit since June. We're just kind of feeling the groove at the moment, and businesses are beginning to get less excited about Brexit. But no doubt, as we move towards March and the Article 50 is invoked, what do you think the landscape's going to be like for business? I have a very strong view on this, but I'll hold back. So who wants to go first? Richard.
Well,
You're living in the Tory heartlands. Do you have a view on that one?
Well, I was part of the Vote Leave campaign in the area where I live, which included Leeds, Harrogate and York. And if you looked at the results for the country, clearly we got what we wanted, which was an exit vote. But Leeds, Harrogate and York voted to stay in. So my ability to campaign and convince people on it wasn't particularly good, it would appear. I think we have to put up and shut up. The people have decided we want to leave Europe for all sorts of reasons. And what we have to do now, as individuals and as a government and as business people, is get on with it and stop whinging. Exporters, it's absolutely fantastic for at the moment because of the exchange rate. Importers, it's a bit harder. I think everybody, apart from one or two people on the street, recognise we need immigration. We need those people, we need those skills that we don't have. We don't need uncontrolled immigration. And that is being put on the table now and I think recognised at all levels. And I just think it's time to get on and do it like we do very well as a country, as a United Kingdom. If we don't have a choice, we get on with what we've got and we deal with it. We've made our choice, let's get on with it.
Thank you. Do you have a view of how it's going to affect SMEs, and in particular access to finance?
Well, I don't think it should affect access to finance in any way. If people like you and the banks accept the situation and start planning for how they're going to get their funds in place, why should it? You know, we've got a long run into this. It's not as if somebody's going to flick a switch overnight. You're all capable business people. You know where you have to get your money from. You get it from there at the best interest rate. You might not be getting it from the same sources in Europe that you got it from before, but there's plenty of money out there in other areas.
Okay, thank you. Colin, you've got an objective view on this, I assume?
In terms of Brexit, in terms of our client base and SMEs, I think things slowed down slightly before the vote and afterwards, but we are where we are, and people, just as we've just said, are getting on with it. I think no one's really caught a Brexit cold as yet, and I think once Article 50 is evoked, we've got the 2 years until we actually leave, if it's ever evoked. I'm still debating whether it'll happen when they say it'll happen. But I think what will be telling, just in general, is, for example, Nissan. I don't know if anyone's seen in the headlines that they're on about moving the plant out of Sunderland, which employs, I think it's 2,500 or 3,000 people in that area. I think if people like Nissan are looking at moving out of England, I think that will affect SMEs, because a lot of the people who supply those big companies are the SME market. In fact, we've got a client who designed the exhaust for the Qashqai, so things like that.
And what a very attractive exhaust.
Exactly, it was fantastic. Yes. But it's those kind of big industry moves that could affect the confidence within the SME market, because a lot of those suppliers into the big PLCs are the SME market. However, I think, you know, we are where we are, we will crack on. I think, you know, the SME market will survive. We're a nation of shopkeepers. We always, for want of a better phrase, we're all small businesses, and we're key to the economy and the job market. So we have to push on and push forward positively. I think the other thing to mention is we're such a big market to Europe, they're not going to cut us off, so it's all about having an amicable divorce, I guess.
And for all those in the audience who've had a divorce, they know exactly what that means. Pam,
Yes.
being a publicly owned bank, or pretty much publicly owned, do you have a view on this, or are you not allowed to say?
I'll be unbiased. There are more exporting opportunities, especially with the pound dropping. I know it's dropped about 19% this week. Conversely, cost of raw materials from abroad has risen, and inflation's predicted to rise as well. So that's going to push up costs further. So we've already seen the fuel price increase. So things are going to, get a bit. There's always winners and losers in these situations. So I know there was something on the news last night about somebody who was exporting, and the value of the pound to them has gone up tremendously. So it's, I suppose, maximising on them opportunities.
Okay.
Yep.
Andy, have you got a brief view on this?
Briefly, I think entrepreneurs will always succeed no matter what governments try to do, whether deliberate or not. I think entrepreneurs always spot opportunities and will fill the void whatever happens. I think one of the things businesses have enjoyed for the last at least 10 years is incredibly low interest rates, and that's been very beneficial for people to set up businesses. Another thing they enjoy is very low taxation rates now. We've got a government that's driving down corporation tax to very low rates compared to what they've been historically. So there's never been a better time to make profit because you're not having to pay too much in tax. So I think these are good things for entrepreneurs. And I think, as Richard rightly says, there's lots of opportunities worldwide now. Worldwide travel is cheap, so to get out and find export markets, there's never been a better time to do that either. Who knows what the Article 50, when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of the individual trade agreements, that I've no doubt going to be difficult, but I think people will always find ways around it and find ways of making money.
Okay. I'm going to resist the temptation to say what I think. Being an avid vote in.
A whinger, you mean?
Yeah, a whinger who will continue to whinge and eventually tell you I told you so.
Which nobody should ever do.
But we will see. The one thing I will comment is the acquisition of funds at the moment is creeping up. So there is a potential that the cost of funds, even though the Bank of England rates are low, the cost of funds to businesses may begin to increase. We're certainly finding that in terms of acquiring funds on the market at the moment. So time will tell, and as we begin to see the thing unravel, we'll be able to reflect on that over a glass of port or whiskey. Right, we're going to have to move on because we're moving towards the end of our questions. So, before we hand over to the audience for any questions, final question really for the panel. Can you give us some examples of clients that you've supported that you were really glad to support? Some of those kind of choice nugget businesses that people might be interested in starting themselves, sectors or things that you think are currently on the up. So who should we go first? Colin, go on, since you'll have a massive client base, go on.
I think there's a real focus on green at the minute. We've got a client who works in sort of the environmental sector. It's a bit of a tech company as well. And they've tripled their turnover each year for the last 2 years and expect to do so again this year. And that's two gentlemen who worked in the industry realised there was a gap in the market, mid-20s. They've been really lucky. They've got a fantastic backer who's backed them financially, and it's really paying dividends now. They're getting into some really big projects, which has been fantastic. We're very lucky at my firm to back some really good, strong businesses, and we've got quite a lot of good news stories. We've had a few clients who quit the job, started out the back of their estate car going around selling, and have grown their businesses to multi-million-pound businesses and are real success stories. So I think tech and green seems to be really
so
growing.
Tech and green. Yeah, okay. Pam, that's a yes as well.
Yeah. Well, also,
are you listening to this? Tech and green. So if you want to get into recycling or put up some windmills or things like that.
Yeah, so I know the housing industry as a whole, because of the pressure on the housing market, is extremely busy. So that has a knock-on effect on such as plumbing businesses,
so
etc.
Tech, green and plumbing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
Richard.
house building.
I would say tech is the area I understand, and the really hot areas at the moment are anything in the cloud, anything to do with security software, because of the issues around hacking and security at the moment. They're really hot areas. But I'm going to jump back to another question that was on the list, which we haven't had time to do, which was, if you could wave a magic wand and get your clients to change one or two things in their businesses, what would you do? And I would say, and I think this is so important, and it's reflected in some of the businesses I've invested in, the ones that I've seen do well, improve your sales and marketing. Get better people. Understand that if your revenues don't grow, nothing else is going to happen. And you get your revenues to grow by investing in good sales and marketing people. Don't treat them like the third party, you know, the lowest of low. Respect them and invest in them, because without them, you ain't going to grow successfully.
Excellent. Andy, are there any trends in our business that we've had a spate of fish and chip shops, haven't we?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think looking at the country as a whole, I think one of the things that you can't deny is there's a huge demographic change going on in Britain, and that's bound to drive entrepreneurs to move into markets which can do well from the older demographic. So I'm thinking in terms of things like travel businesses, because you've got a lot of baby boomers who've got lots of money and want to travel nicely because they can afford to. So I would think travel will be big. And I think another thing that comes with that ageing population is healthcare and healthcare technologies. And I would be amazed if we don't see some huge new businesses come forward on that.
Okay, so that's Andy looking into his crystal ball there. So he wants to set up a number of travel businesses that also provide drips and nurses. And wheelchair access. Okay,
Yes.
we're going to throw it over to the audience now. So you've got a knowledgeable panel here who are willing to take any questions. The more difficult, the better. So over to you. We've got probably five or 8 minutes to try and deal with those. Any questions at all?
Stunned silence.
Wow, stunned silence. No questions at all. Can't elicit. Oh, go on. Thank you. Excellent, sir. Over to you. Would you like to tell us who you are?
Yes, I will stand.
Oh, you don't have to.
My name is Waud. Background is medical.
Okay.
I'm a consultant in my field. I'm interested in tech and healthcare industry. Like everyone who's sitting here, very much at the early start, invested my money in a project. We're going to go out soon,
Yeah.
but I'm already start thinking about the next step, and that's where I need people like you guys to support me. How can I approach you?
Come and talk to us after the event.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the businesses we supported fairly recently, in the last few years, which is growing like mad, which is in that technology, healthcare technology sector, is mobile scanning. And you may have seen some of these Arctic-sized wagons come into a supermarket near you, and often you can go to the doctors, and if you need a scan, the doctor will say, "Yeah, I can book you in at 10:30 at Sainsbury's." And literally, there are mobile...
Do your shopping at the same time.
Yeah. So that's a thing that's come out of nowhere. So these scanners go to different supermarkets in different towns through the week. So they're travelling around, and the doctor will book you in so that you can have a scan really near to where you live, rather than sending you to the hospital for a scan. So that's just happened in the last 2 or 3 years, and there are quite a few of these now driving around the country, and that's just one thing that's happened.
They were quite canny because they hired the scanners and made a very low margin in order to build the revenues in order to justify the business, and they have now then bought the scanners themselves and then improved the margins that they have. So the first 2 years it was building revenue at low margins. Now it's about maintaining the revenues at wider margins. So canny guys.
I'd just like to comment on the healthcare market, because it is undoubtedly healthcare and leisure and general care about our well-being is an area that's of interest. dealing with the NHS is very difficult. So if you're thinking of starting a business that relies on the NHS ordering 10,000 million of these things, your business is probably going to go nowhere. You have to establish some credibility first. There are lots of areas in the private sector where opportunities exist. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's got a product that goes on your wrist, and instead of it just being like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit, it comes with support from, what do you call them? I don't know the name of these people, I don't bother with them. These people who, sports trainers and people like that. So you get a package that monitors what you're doing, personal trainer, that's it, and you have so many hours a month where you can contact them as part of the package. So it's things not just about clinical health, it's things all around well-being that I think is a big growth area, and there's no doubt that the rollout of broadband has made it easier for people to take advantage of these skills that are out there.
I think, specifically to your question, sir, I think the thing that we would suggest is that have informal discussions before you make formal approaches, and try and test the idea first, because there's nothing worse than going with an idea that you think is fully formed and then getting it kind of poo-pooed, and then that kind of cuts avenues of opportunities to you. So try and test the idea to as many so-called experts as you can find, and probably the best or the first port of call is people who are experts in a particular field or accountants. Go for the professionals and get their views on it first. Right, time for one last question. If there is burning question in the audience there, thank you, sir. You've saved our bacon. Go for it. Make it a good one.
Okay. Right, well, my name's Craig. I've got a couple of tech companies in Bradford.
Can I introduce you to Richard? He might be interested in investing in you.
Interesting, so he's got a big wallet as well. So,
Huge, you can barely sit down.
Sat on it now.
It's absolutely full of moths.
I've got a couple of tech companies in Bradford, but I've also got an IT and tech company in Nigeria. We've got a lot of good contacts in Nigeria.
It's you I get all those emails from then.
Well, we do get paid for spam emails. But my question for you guys is, as I say, we've got a lot of good contacts in Nigeria, government departments, ministers, that kind of thing. But how could you guys? We've got a good business plan. How could you guys help my overseas business and sort of expand beyond Nigeria as well?
Blimey.
Well, can I do that?
Well, the first thing to say is...
The general intake of breath probably...
No, I was going to say the first thing I'd say is, have you dealt with UKTI over the years? Because obviously they're a government body who are there to help people looking to undertake international trade.
We did the course last year. Pam, I can't remember Pam's surname, but Pam helped us out on the UKTI stuff. And we also got funding to do some business trips to Nigeria as well.
Okay. Sorry, Richard, we interrupted you.
Yeah, politically correct or not, and I know this is being recorded, but there is Nigeria does have a bit of an aura around it of being corrupt. And asking somebody like me to invest money in an IT business that's going to be in Nigeria is a lot harder for me to grasp than dealing with somebody who's within 4 hours drive away. And it does make more sense to invest within 4 hours drive away in a culture you understand, in an economy you understand, than something that's a long way away and has a historic problem with corruption. I'll happily have a chat with you about it and point you in some direction. So I've got some business cards, so I'll give you a business card. I've got to shoot after this, so I can't stay and chat.
We've got the stand 28 gallons.
Well, I haven't got time, unfortunately. I've got to be away straight after this, so I'll give you a business card, and if you do want to chat, then get in touch.
The only thing I would say to that, and I think on this point we will actually close, but there will be specialist investors. It's just finding them. So potentially, maybe the banks might be able to assist. With
I have got a few contacts that specialise in markets abroad, exporting, etc. So come see me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to my guests. Thank you to Pam, for Richard, Colin, and Andy. Thank you for your patience, and I hope you found it helpful. And enjoy the rest of the day as you look round the...
How am I going to share this document? Sorry, thank you. I'm just...
We'll give it to
We'll give it to Shiraz. Shiraz can send it out to the delegate
Thank
list.
you.
Email address. Send it
Thank
to me.
you.
Yeah, I will.